The room went silent the moment her hand collided with his cheek. The sharp smack echoed louder than the music, louder than the clinking of champagne glasses, louder than the murmurs of half-drunk co-workers at the annual gala. Under the golden chandeliers of the hotel ballroom, Barbara stood tall in her crimson dress, her lips curled into a smirk that wasn't even trying to hide its satisfaction. "That's for pretending like you mattered," she said, her voice soaked in venom, loud enough for everyone near the dance floor to hear. "You think just because we dated for a few years, you get to follow me around like a puppy?" She turned, tossing her hair back as if she had just dropped dead weight. Robert didn't flinch. Not when the slap landed, not when the room began to whisper, not when Michael, in his tailored white suit, walked up beside Barbara, grinning like he'd just won a prize. "Damn," Michael muttered under his breath, eyes fixed on Robert. "Didn't know she had it in her. You all right, buddy?" But the condescension in his voice made it clear he didn't care. Barbara giggled, nudging Michael playfully. "He's always been dramatic. He'll be fine." Robert looked at her, eyes calm, not red, not watery, just empty. He turned around, slowly, without saying a word, not even a glance back. The ballroom doors opened, letting in a rush of night air as he walked out, one hand in his pocket, the other still carrying the small box he had been planning to give her. A pendant, silver, customized with her initials. He dropped it in a trash can just outside the hotel entrance without breaking stride. Back at the apartment, the silence hit harder than the slap. Robert stood at the doorway for a long time, staring into the darkness. No lights on, just the hum of the city through the windows. Then he moved. He went to the shelf above the desk, took down the framed photo of their trip to Prague, the one where Barbara was kissing his cheek. Cracked the glass on the edge of the table, peeled out the photo, tore it in half. Her half went into the trash. The next half hour was mechanical, unpinning Polaroids from the corkboard, deleting photos from the cloud, untagging himself from posts she had uploaded with captions like, "My everything" and "Forever love." The speed of his fingers didn't match the emptiness in his eyes. He wasn't angry, not anymore, just done. The last message she had sent him, "Don't forget to smile tonight, I'll be watching you from the crowd." He hovered over it for a second, thumb paused. Then, without hesitation, he deleted the thread and blocked her number. He opened the drawer, her letters, her sketches, the dried lavender she had once slipped into his book. One by one, they went into the shoebox. He sealed it shut with duct tape, took the elevator down to the basement, and left it beside the dumpster. Inside, he stared at his phone one last time. Her contact name, B, gone. No more texts, no more calls, no more anything. He sat on the edge of the bed, exhaled slowly, and whispered like he was telling it to himself, like a truth that needed to be spoken out loud just once. "You don't get to come back from that." They were born 4 blocks apart, in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other by name and every front porch held a story. Robert and Barbara were introduced before they could speak properly, at age 4, sitting side by side at a birthday party neither of them remembered. Their mothers were close friends from college, and by the time the kids had started grade school, it was already an unspoken rule: if you saw one of them, the other wasn't far behind. Robert was a quiet child, the type to sit in the corner with a book while the other kids wrestled in the mud. He was thin, with sharp eyes and hair that always looked slightly too long for his narrow face, the kind of kid teachers described as sensitive when writing progress reports. The kind of boy who came home with scraped knees not because he was wild, but because he was always the one who tripped trying to get out of someone else's way. Barbara was the opposite, loud, brave, confident to a fault. She wore mismatched socks, climbed trees in dresses, and once broke her arm jumping off the second-floor balcony just to prove she wasn't scared. She had a laugh that could startle birds out of trees and a scowl sharp enough to make grown men pause. In elementary school, she once got detention for shoving a boy's face into his mashed potatoes because he made fun of Robert's stutter. "Say it again," she had snarled, standing over the boy as he gasped for air. "Call him a freak one more time." Robert hadn't said a word. He was too stunned, but when she looked at him with that grin, gap-toothed and proud, something inside him shifted. He didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was warm and bright and terrifying. They walked home together every day from 2nd grade to 9th. Barbara would do most of the talking, recounting class gossip or rambling about the new comic book character she loved. Robert just listened. Ed, occasionally nodding, quietly memorizing everything she said like it mattered more than the textbooks in his bag. On rainy days, she'd drag him under the same umbrella even when he protested that he didn't mind getting wet. "You'll catch a cold and die, dummy," she'd say. "Then I'll have no one to copy math homework from." They had a tradition every Sunday, a stop at the corner bakery for cheese rolls and peach tea. Barbara always forgot her wallet. Robert never minded. She'd take the first bite out of his food anyway, mumbling with her mouth full, "You know it tastes better when it's yours." Robert's parents adored her. His dad joked that Barbara had more personality than their entire family combined. His mom would smile knowingly whenever Barbara stayed for dinner, which was often. "If these two don't end up married, I'll be shocked," she'd whisper over the sink. Barbara's parents were no different. Her father ruffled Robert's hair like a second son. Her mother gave him second helpings and once slipped him a Valentine's Day card to accidentally leave on Barbara's desk. Robert never dared. Instead, he wrote letters he never sent. Drew tiny sketches of her when she wasn't looking, curled up on the lawn, eyes shut, a book fallen against her chest. He collected these quiet treasures like a coward and stored them in a shoebox under his bed, labeling it, "Someday." High school brought changes. Barbara joined the drama club, won competitions, and started wearing eyeliner that made her eyes look even sharper. Robert kept to the background, debate team, computer lab, tutoring middle school kids in math. Still, their routines stayed the same. She waited for him by the gate every morning. He saved her a seat in every class. They shared lunch, shared secrets, shared silences that meant more than words. There was a moment, one crisp winter afternoon, walking home beneath a sky, the color of crushed lavender, when Barbara grabbed his sleeve out of nowhere. "Don't ever leave, okay?" she said. He blinked. "What?" "I don't know. Just promise me," she said, softer now. "You'll always be around. I like knowing you're always there." He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. His promise had been made years ago, in the way he looked at her when she wasn't watching. One summer in 8th grade, a group of boys cornered Robert after school. They were older, loud, cruel, the kind that thrived on picking out the weak and dragging them into the dirt. They pushed him into the gravel, ripped his backpack open, tossed his notes in a puddle. Barbara came out of nowhere. One moment the boys were laughing, the next, she had one by the collar, her knee in his stomach. "You like picking on quiet kids?" she barked. "Try picking on me." She got suspended. Robert got a busted lip. When they sat together on the curb outside the principal's office, Barbara tossed him a juice box and grinned. "You owe me your life now, loser." "I'd give it to you anyway," he whispered, but not loud enough for her to hear. In 10th grade, when her crush broke her heart, she showed up at Robert's window with mascara-streaked cheeks and asked, "Can I stay here tonight?" He didn't hesitate. He let her sleep in his bed while he curled up in the desk chair, watching the rise and fall of her breath like it was the only thing keeping the night from swallowing him whole. By senior year, people had started making assumptions. "You two together?" they'd ask. "You should be." Robert would smile. Barbara would laugh and call him her emotional support nerd. He never corrected her, never dared ask for more. He was the one who made her flashcards before every exam. He was the one who fixed her bike chain after school. He was the one who showed up when her parents forgot her birthday and brought her a single cupcake with a tiny candle. She blew it out with a sad smile and said, "You always know exactly what I need." And he did. He always did. But she didn't see him, not really, not like he saw her, and for Robert, that was enough. As long as she was happy, as long as she smiled, as long as he could be close, even if he couldn't touch the space she kept hidden behind her jokes and confidence. Because love, for Robert, had never been loud. It wasn't confessions or flowers or grand gestures. It was sitting beside someone in silence, knowing your presence was enough. It was watching her fall in love with the world, even if it meant she might never fall in love with him. It was the way he looked at her every time she laughed. And how, deep down, he prayed she would never realize just how much she meant to him, because if she did, he was terrified she might walk away. It started with the transfer. New semester, new faces, a new name on the roster, scrawled in bold marker at the top of the seating chart, Michael Alvarez. He walked into class like he owned it, perfect hair, perfect smile, a leather watch too expensive for any teenager. The room buzzed as soon as he entered, a sudden current of whispers and glances. Even the teacher looked momentarily caught off guard by his confidence. Robert didn't care at first. He barely looked up from his notebook, but Barbara did. She raised an eyebrow as Michael introduced himself at the front of the class. Michael Alvarez, came from Northridge High. Big school, bigger drama, he said with a wink. The girls laughed, even Barbara smirked. He was placed 2 seats behind her, 3 seats behind Robert. During lunch, Michael didn't sit with the other new kids. He pulled a chair over to Barbara's table, like he'd always belonged. She looked amused, then invited him to share her fries. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, Michael moved quickly. He made friends with everyone, told jokes that weren't really funny but made people laugh anyway, played basketball after class, made the teachers laugh too, even when he didn't turn in his homework. But what bothered Robert most wasn't how easily Michael fit in, it was how easily Barbara let him. She had never been this open with anyone, not like this, not even with girls she'd known for years. With Michael, she laughed louder. Her eyes lingered longer. She let him copy her notes, ruffle her hair, tease her. One morning, Robert showed up with breakfast in hand like he always had. 2 steamed buns, still warm, wrapped in a napkin with her name written in marker. Barbara was chatting with Michael near the lockers. Robert approached and offered her the food like he had 100 times before. She turned, looked at the buns, and blinked. "Oh," she said, pulling her backpack onto her shoulder. "I already ate." Michael raised an eyebrow, grinning. "Damn, bro, that's a little clingy, don't you think?" Robert froze, hand still outstretched. Barbara didn't laugh, but she didn't correct him either. She just looked at Robert and said quietly, "Maybe don't make it a daily thing." Robert forced a smile. "Sure, sorry." That night, he didn't eat dinner. The buns were still in his backpack when he got home, cold and untouched. The next day, Michael's teasing escalated. In English class, the teacher asked about literary symbols. Robert raised his hand, explained the motif of loneliness in Of Mice and Men. He'd barely finished speaking when Michael muttered under his breath, "Figures he'd relate to loneliness." Laughter. Not from everyone, but enough. Robert looked over his shoulder. Michael smiled innocently. "Just a joke, man." Barbara didn't laugh, but she didn't say anything either. It happened again in gym, again in study hall, always subtle, always under the teacher's radar. Robert tried to ignore it, tried not to care. He still brought her water when she forgot, still texted her notes when she missed class, still waited outside in the rain, umbrella in hand. But Barbara came out with Michael now, both of them sharing his jacket. One afternoon, Robert left a small envelope on her desk. Inside was a sketch, Barbara on the swing set behind her house, hair blowing across her face. It was soft, gentle, private. He found it later, tossed into the recycling bin. His chest ached, but he said nothing. Until the biology lab. They were paired for an assignment, Barbara, Robert, and Michael. It was awkward from the start. Michael leaned across the table, talking to Barbara like Robert wasn't even there. "You know what's weird?" Michael said suddenly, glancing at Robert. "You've had this guy following you around for years, like a stray pup. Doesn't that ever creep you out?" Robert blinked. The entire group went quiet. Barbara looked uncomfortable. "Michael." "No, seriously," Michael continued, voice light, joking. "Is he, obsessed with you? Do you even like him back, or do you just pity him?" Robert stared at him, the pen in his hand trembling. "That's enough." Michael laughed. "Or what? You gonna draw me a picture about it?" That stung, deeper than he expected. Robert stood up. "Say something like that again, and you'll find out." Michael rose 2 inches away, taller, smug. "What's the matter? Finally grew a spine now that your girlfriend's not holding your leash." "She's not my girlfriend," Robert said coldly, "but she's not your trophy either." Michael scoffed. "Oh, so we're pretending you're not just pissed she picked me?" Before Robert could react, Barbara stood up between them. "Stop!" Michael backed off. "I'm just being honest." Then she turned to Robert. "And you? What the hell is wrong with you?" Robert's chest tightened. You were just what?" she snapped. "Trying to start a fight? Acting like some wounded victim? Can't handle a joke?" "It wasn't a joke," Robert said. "He was humiliating me." Barbara's eyes burned. "You're embarrassing me." The words hung in the air. Then she raised her hand, slapped him. A sharp, stinging sound. The classroom froze. Robert didn't react, not immediately. He stared at her, wide-eyed, disbelieving. His cheek burned, his pulse rang in his ears. Barbara looked just as shocked, but not apologetic. Michael muttered, "Damn." Robert stepped back, slowly, turned, picked up his bag, and walked out. Not a word. He didn't look back. Later that day, Barbara tried to text him, then call. He didn't answer. At home, Robert blocked her number, deleted every photo, took down every note, every drawing, every screenshot. He emptied the drawer that held her letters, tossed them into a shoebox, carried it downstairs, and dropped it into the trash without hesitation. She had slapped him once, but the echo was loud enough to end 10 years. Robert stopped sitting by the window. For as long as anyone could remember, he always sat there, second seat from the back, third row, near the far end of the classroom where the light came in soft and golden in the mornings. It was Barbara's favorite place too. She used to lean against it during break, sipping iced tea, chattering about everything from cafeteria drama to her dreams of becoming a stage actress. But now, someone else sat by the window, someone with sharper laughter and louder jokes. Michael. After the slap, Robert changed seats without a word. He moved to the corner, beside the supply cabinet, where no sunlight reached and no one talked much. It wasn't just the seat. He stopped walking the usual route to school. Stopped showing up at the bakery where he and Barbara used to share cheese rolls every Thursday. Stopped eating lunch in the open hallways and instead stayed hidden behind the music room, chewing quietly through sandwiches that tasted like nothing. He became a ghost in his own routine. At home, he stripped everything that reminded him of her. The keychain she gave him last winter, the tiny silver fox, he dropped into the river on his walk home. The books she had annotated, her handwriting looped in the margins, were packed into cardboard boxes and left outside the library's donation bin. His sketchbook, half filled with portraits of her, smiling, scowling, laughing, he tore page by page, crumpling each one before throwing them into the trash. He even deleted the backup folder. The one he swore he'd never erase, gone. And yet, the ache didn't go away. It was worst at night, when the world grew quiet and the silence pressed in like a storm cloud. That was when the memories crept in, uninvited. He saw Barbara with her fists clenched, standing in front of him when those boys tried to corner him in the 7th grade. She had blood on her cheek and gravel in her palms, but she didn't back down. "Touch him again, and I swear to God I'll break your noses," she had shouted. Her voice shook with rage, but her smile afterward had been proud and wicked, and so deeply hers. He remembered the time she pulled him out of the science fair just to run to the amusement park. "Who cares about grades when there's funnel cake and roller coasters," she'd said. They sat at the top of the Ferris wheel, her head resting on his shoulder, a piece of cotton candy melting on her lips. "You'll always stay with me, right?" she asked, "even when we're old and boring?" "I will," he'd promised. But she hadn't. Now she sat with Michael in the cafeteria, feeding him fries. He made her laugh, but it wasn't the same laugh, not the one Robert knew. This one sounded lighter, more performative. It echoed too loudly, felt too rehearsed. Sometimes, in the hallway, he'd catch Barbara looking at him, just a second too long, but when their eyes met, she'd look away like he didn't exist. She was always with someone, always smiling, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. He tried to ignore it. Tried to stop caring. But forgetting someone you built your whole childhood around doesn't happen in a day, or a week, or even a month. It happens in uneven pieces, through long silences, closed doors, and the cruel realization that love, once twisted, doesn't resemble love at all. And then there was Elizabeth. She had always been there, in the background, just a year ahead, quiet, polite, usually seen reading by the vending machines or scribbling notes in the back of the library. She wasn't loud, she wasn't the kind of girl people gossiped about. Which is probably why Robert noticed her only when everything else had fallen apart. It happened by accident. He was sitting behind the gym, eating lunch alone again, when she walked past and paused. "You always eat here now?" she asked, her voice soft, like it didn't want to scare him away. Robert looked up, startled. He nodded once. She didn't push further, just looked at the sandwich in his hand and said, "Peanut butter and bananas? That's either very brave or very sad." He gave the smallest smile. "Bit of both." She sat beside him, careful to leave a respectful distance. "I liked your sketch during the art exhibit last year," she said after a pause. "The one with the girl on the swing." He tensed. That sketch was of Barbara. Of course it was. He almost said nothing. But her voice had no judgment, no pity, just simple truth. I don't draw anymore, he muttered. Pity, she said. You were good at it. He didn't know why, but her presence felt quiet. Not empty. Not fake. Just quiet. Like a space he hadn't realized he needed. Over the next few days, she found him again. Sometimes at lunch, sometimes after class, never invasive, never loud, just there. With stories about her dog or weird facts from her philosophy elective. Sometimes she'd offer him candy. Other times, she brought extra notebooks, by mistake. He never asked for anything, but she gave anyway, and slowly, almost without noticing, he began to respond. A few words at a time, a full sentence, a short laugh, a question, then a real conversation. He started sketching again, not people, not faces, just trees, hands, shadows, safe things. Barbara, on the other hand, became more animated the more she saw them together. Michael would drape his arm over her shoulder, overly possessive, especially when Elizabeth was near. Barbara played along, but sometimes her eyes wandered. Once, during assembly, she turned in her seat and caught Robert looking ahead while Elizabeth leaned close, whispering something in his ear. Barbara didn't smile that day. In fact, she didn't say a word during lunch. That week, she posted a photo of her and Michael on social media, her lips brushing his cheek, captioned, "Finally someone who knows how to treat me right." Elizabeth saw it and didn't say anything. Robert did. "She's trying too hard," he muttered, scrolling past the post. Elizabeth tilted her head. "Still hurts?" He was quiet for a long time before he answered. "Not in the way I expected." He didn't explain, she didn't press. But the silence between them wasn't painful. It was healing. There was no flash, no romance, no grand confession, just two people sitting close in a world that had felt too loud, too cruel for too long. And in that stillness, Robert began to understand that love didn't always come with fire. Sometimes, it came with peace, with time, and the slow realization that you don't have to chase someone to be seen. You just have to stop looking at the person who never truly saw you in the first place. It was a Monday morning when Barbara cornered Robert outside the school library. The hallway was mostly empty except for a few students passing between periods. She looked agitated, lipstick slightly smeared, arms crossed, eyes sharper than he remembered. "Can we talk?" she asked, tone brisk. Robert paused, slipping his phone into his pocket. "We already did," he said flatly. "No, not like this." Her voice dropped. "It's important." He sighed and nodded once, stepping toward the side corridor by the vending machines. The space was narrow and quiet, tucked between two art rooms, familiar, private. Barbara stepped in front of him, arms still folded. "Michael's not coming to school today." Robert blinked. "Okay?" "He said you threatened him," she said bluntly. Robert stared at her for a second, as if trying to process whether she was serious. "What?" "Don't play dumb," Barbara snapped. "He said you pulled him aside behind the gym last week, that you said if he didn't back off, you'd make sure he regretted it." Robert's face remained unreadable. "I haven't spoken to him since everything." "Really?" she scoffed. "Because he looked pretty shaken when he told me." "He's lying." Barbara stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "So you're saying he made it up? For what? Why would he lie about that?" "Why would I do it?" Robert asked, voice calm but edged. "Why would I care enough to confront him? You made your choice, I moved on." Barbara faltered, just for a second, then her expression hardened again. "You're jealous, Robert. You've always been jealous." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Of him?" "Yes," she said, exasperated. "He's charming, confident, the kind of guy who knows what he wants. You hate that he took my attention away from you." "I didn't hate that," Robert said. "I hated that you let him mock me and stood there smiling. I hated that someone I trusted more than anyone though. But it was funny when I got hurt." Barbara's face flushed. She opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off. "I didn't touch him, I didn't say anything to him, but if he's walking around scared, maybe it's his own guilt talking." Barbara looked unsure. For the first time in weeks, her posture wavered. She tried. "I want to fix things." Robert stared at her. "I want things to go back to normal," she said, more quietly now. "You, me, before everything got so messed up." "There is no before, Barbara," he said. Please, she whispered, reaching for his arm. Just then, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Elizabeth appeared from around the corner, holding 2 paper cups. She paused when she saw them, eyes flicking from Barbara's hand on Robert's arm to the look on his face. Hey, she said calmly, walking over and slipping her arm naturally through Robert's. She handed him one of the cups. Hot chocolate, no sugar, just how you like it. Barbara's hand fell away like she'd been burned. Robert took the cup, murmuring, "Thanks." Elizabeth turned her gaze toward Barbara. There was no hostility, no smugness, just sharp, measured honesty. "Is this going to be a regular thing now?" she asked softly. "Accusing Robert of things he didn't do? Or is today special?" Barbara blinked, clearly thrown. "He's not the one playing games," Elizabeth continued. "He's just trying to move on, and you—" "I'm not playing games," Barbara snapped. Elizabeth didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Then stop acting like you still own him." Barbara's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "I get it," Elizabeth said. "You lost someone who cared about you more than you realized. You thought he'd wait, you thought he'd always be there, but now he's not, and instead of facing that, you're looking for excuses." Barbara's hands curled into fists. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Elizabeth replied, calm as ever. "I know you threw him away for someone who made you feel important. And now that he's happy without you, suddenly you want to fix things." Robert stood still through it all, sipping the hot chocolate slowly, eyes never leaving Barbara. Barbara looked between them, at Elizabeth's arm looped around his, the way he didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Something cracked in her expression. She shook her head once, like trying to wake from a dream. "This isn't you," she said to Robert. "You're not like this." He finally spoke. "You mean I'm not cold, I'm not cruel, I'm not someone who ignores people just because it's easier?" "Yes," she whispered. He shrugged. "Maybe I learned from you." That landed harder than any slap. Barbara stepped back, eyes wide. For a second, her facade crumbled, and all that was left was a girl who realized too late that she couldn't control the damage she caused. "You never used to talk to me like that," she murmured. "You never used to look at me like I was beneath you," he replied. Silence. Then Elizabeth tugged gently on his sleeve. "Come on, we're going to be late for chem." Robert gave Barbara one last look. "I didn't hurt him," he said. "But even if I had, it'd still be less than what you did to me." Barbara didn't follow. Didn't call after him. She just stood frozen in the hallway, her reflection caught faintly in the glass case beside her. For the first time in her life, she looked small and alone. She turned and walked the other way, her steps unsteady. Her spiral had begun. The venue was buzzing with laughter and warm yellow lights, filled with friends, classmates, and a few family members who gathered to celebrate Robert's 18th birthday. It wasn't extravagant, but it was meaningful, an indoor garden rooftop lit by paper lanterns, soft music humming from a corner speaker, and a table layered with gifts and handwritten cards. Elizabeth stood beside Robert, chatting easily with one of his debate teammates, her smile as effortless as the lavender dress she wore. Robert looked calm, composed. If he was nervous hosting this many people, he didn't show it. He greeted each guest with a quiet nod or a handshake, and every so often, his eyes would wander to Elizabeth as if anchoring himself back to peace. But then the elevator chimed, and Barbara walked in. Her heels tapped like pinpricks against the polished floor. She wore white, the kind of white reserved for moments when one needed to look pure, soft, untouched. A satin dress with lace detail around the collar, perfectly paired with a pearl hairpin and pink lipstick that couldn't hide the redness around her eyes. Michael wasn't with her. She walked in slowly, scanning the room, then paused when her gaze landed on Robert. He saw her. Everyone saw her. And just like that, the buzz dimmed. Elizabeth turned. Her expression didn't change. She simply stepped slightly aside to give Robert space, but didn't let go of the drink in her hand, or her quiet stance beside him. Barbara started walking toward them, clutching a small gift bag that trembled in her fingers. She didn't smile, her jaw was set tight, her shoulders stiff. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Robert looked at her for a long moment, then turned toward the hallway that led to the terrace. He walked first, she followed. Outside, the city skyline twinkled beneath the night sky. The breeze brushed lightly through his hair. ire, tussling it in a way that made him look older than he was, like he'd outgrown something. Barbara stopped a few feet from him. "You look different," she said. He didn't reply. She held out the bag. "I got you something. Just something simple." He didn't take it. Her lips parted, and she exhaled shakily. "I didn't come here to ruin your night." "Then don't," he said. She blinked, then stepped closer. "I came to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." "Barbara," he murmured, "don't do this here." "No, please," her voice cracked, "just let me say it." She swallowed, then looked him straight in the eyes. "I was wrong, about everything, about Michael, about us." Her fingers clenched the edge of her dress. "I thought I wanted something exciting, someone louder, someone more confident, but it was always you." He said nothing. "I liked you, Robert, I really did. I was just too stupid to say it when it mattered, and when things changed, I didn't know how to undo it, so I pretended I didn't care, but I did, I do." Still, he didn't move. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. I wish I could go back and fix everything. I wish I hadn't." Her voice trailed off. The sentence hung in the air, unfinished. "You wish you hadn't slapped me?" he asked finally. Her shoulders shivered. "Yes." Robert turned slightly, his profile catching the gold of the lanterns from inside. His face was unreadable. "That's not what hurt the most." She blinked. "Then what?" "The night before," he said slowly. "I heard you." Barbara stiffened. He turned fully now, locking eyes with her. "You were sitting outside the diner with your friends. Michael was there. You laughed, said I was boring, that I'd probably still like you even if you slapped me in public." Her breath hitched. "And then Michael said, 'Try it, see what happens.'" Robert's voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. "And you said, 'Sure, let's see if he still chases me after that.'" Tears started forming in her eyes. "I stood around the corner, I heard every word." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He continued, quieter now. "So the next day, when your hand hit my face, it wasn't just the slap. It was knowing it wasn't an accident, it wasn't anger, it wasn't heat of the moment, it was a test. Robert," she choked. "You did it to see how far you could push me, and still expect me to come back." She shook her head. "No, I didn't mean it like that. It was stupid. I was showing off. I didn't think." "But you did think," he said. "That's the problem. You thought I'd take it, that I'd keep loving you no matter what." Her tears finally spilled. "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared that you'd stop, that you'd move on. And I panicked. I acted like an idiot. I ruined everything." "You did." Barbara reached out slowly, trembling. "I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. Just tell me how." Robert stepped back. Her hand hung in the air, suspended in silence. "I've replayed that moment 1,000 times," he said. "Not because I want to forgive you, but because I keep asking myself how I let it go that far, how I let someone I trusted humiliate me just to get attention." "I was selfish," she whispered. "Yes. I didn't know what I wanted." "But I did," he replied. "I wanted you, always. I memorized your habits, skipped meals to walk you home, spent years thinking your happiness was more important than mine." "I know," she cried. "I worshipped you," he said, his voice shaking now. "And you turned me into a joke." She sank to her knees, sobbing now, the white dress pooling around her like snow melting under rain. "I didn't mean it," she said again and again, like a prayer. "I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it." Robert looked at her. "Barbara," he said. She looked up, face streaked with mascara, eyes wild with desperation. He inhaled, slowly, deeply. "Yes," he said. "Just because of that slap." She froze. "And yes," he added, softer now, like he was saying it to the wind more than to her. "Even now, when I see you, my face still stings." She gasped, as if the words had struck her physically, then covered her mouth with her hand, trying to contain the sound. Inside, someone called out, laughter, the rustle of gift wrap, music turning upbeat again. Robert turned to go. "Wait," Barbara whimpered. But he didn't stop. He opened the door and stepped back inside, into the light. Back into the warmth, into the space where people smiled because they meant it, where Elizabeth looked up at him with calm, knowing eyes and handed him a slice of cake. He didn't look back. Outside, alone on the terrace, Barbara sat on cold concrete and cried like it was the only thing left she could do. The news spread in whispers. Barbara and Michael had broken up. It wasn't dramatic, no scenes in the hallway, no public fallout. One day, they simply stopped sitting together, stopped posting photos, stopped speaking at all. It was as if the storm had finally burned itself out, leaving only the silence in its wake, but it was what came after that told the real story. Barbara stopped showing up to lunch, then to practice, then, eventually, to entire classes. Teachers started calling her name twice during roll. Her grades slipped, hard. Once top 10 in the year, she was suddenly fighting just to pass. There were rumors she failed 2 of her finals, that she cried during the math midterm and walked out halfway through, that she changed her number and left all the group chats. She switched friend circles twice in a month. First clinging to the loudest, most popular girls, then drifting to quiet nobodies who didn't ask questions. Her social media emptied. Her stories became blank. Her captions stopped having words, just dots, just silence. And every now and then, someone would glance at Robert and wonder if he'd say anything, if he noticed, if he cared. But he never said a word. He was busy. College decisions rolled in, and Robert, unsurprisingly, got offers from nearly every place he applied to. Elizabeth too. She had set her sights on a particular university since sophomore year, and when the acceptance letters arrived, both of them ended up with matching envelopes. It felt effortless. Not the achievement, but the way they chose to move forward together. They didn't talk about Barbara, not anymore. The last time her name was brought up, Elizabeth had looked at Robert and simply asked, "Are you okay with letting it go?" He had nodded. Not because it didn't hurt, but because holding on felt heavier. In the summer before college, Robert focused on himself. He read more. Drew again. Took on tutoring jobs, helped his parents pack. Some nights, Elizabeth would come over and sit on the porch with him, bare feet on the wooden steps, 2 mugs of tea between them. They didn't need to say much. One evening, she reached over and rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't pull away, just closed his eyes and exhaled. It wasn't a declaration, it wasn't a moment meant to be posted or remembered like a landmark. But it was something real. And that was enough. Their relationship was quiet at first, private. Robert didn't want attention, didn't want gossip. The wounds from Barbara still lingered, not bleeding anymore, but still sore in the places no one could see. Elizabeth understood. She didn't rush him. Never pushed. She just stayed. College brought change. New city, new dorms, new faces. But some things remained the same. Elizabeth was still beside him, laughing during late-night study sessions, stealing fries off his plate, scribbling doodles in the margins of his textbooks. Robert found himself smiling more, breathing easier. And then, on his birthday, his first one away from home, something arrived. A box. Small, carefully wrapped, no note inside. But he recognized the handwriting on the return label instantly. Barbara. He stared at it for a long time, didn't open it. Instead, he walked it down to the nearest courier office, handed it over, and said, "Return to sender, collect on delivery." The clerk nodded, and the box was gone. The next year, it came again. Different wrapping, same address. He didn't hesitate this time, sent it back that very evening. Elizabeth watched him place the receipt on the counter. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just a habit she hasn't broken yet." "Do you want her to?" He paused, then, "Yes." Elizabeth nodded, said nothing more. A week later, they were sitting at a cafe just off campus when she looked at him over the rim of her mug. "Can I ask something?" "Sure. Why haven't we told anyone we're together?" Robert looked down, thought about it. "I think part of me was still holding space," he admitted. "Not for her, for the pain." Elizabeth didn't flinch. "And now?" He looked at her, really looked. The sunlight hit her hair just right, turning the strands gold. She smiled at him, Not the kind of smile that asked for anything. Just the kind that reminded him he wasn't alone. "Now I want to hold something better," he said. So they posted a photo. Nothing dramatic, just a shot of their hands, intertwined, resting on a table between 2 cups of coffee. The caption was simple: "Peace." The response was quiet, a few likes, a few surprised messages, and then silence. And just like that, the next birthday came. No box, no message, no call, nothing. Robert stood by the window of their apartment, watching the sky turn pink with the last light of day. Elizabeth was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. He could hear the faint clatter of plates, the hiss of boiling water. He closed his eyes for a moment. The pain was gone, not erased, but distant, like an old photo you stopped recognizing yourself in. He opened the window, letting the breeze drift through the curtains. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, a child laughed. The world moved on. Elizabeth stepped beside him, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" she asked again. He took one from her, sipped, then smiled. "I am." They stood there for a long time, watching the sun sink beneath the horizon. The sky flared with orange and blush rose pink, streaked with soft lavender shadows. The kind of light that made everything look like a painting. Robert looked at it quietly, then murmured, almost to himself, "This should have ended long ago." He paused, then added, softer, "I just didn't know it yet."